two different things. Your plans, you don't know what your disaster is going to be. Your plan's going to cover both, hopefully. Once you get that plan down, the little things like the public safety power shutoffs, access to 911 through Spectrum Voice will be temporarily unavailable during our maintenance window. Please be prepared with other options. That's pretty easy to do if you have a plan. That's pretty serious if you don't have a plan and you don't know about it. All right, so the first question I'm gonna ask you to do, and these are at the radio table, just so y'all know. Who do you need and who do you want to communicate with? There's some really obvious ones, like your family, your neighbors, your friends. Maybe not so obvious is if you are an employer and your workplace has a disaster, how are you gonna reach your employees? If you're an employee and you have a disaster, how are you gonna reach your work? That's easier because in theory they're there. Infrastructure during the ice storm, we discovered that it was useful to have things like ODOT's non-emergency dispatch number. If you're evacuated, your pharmacist becomes your best friend. You might need to talk to insurance agents, banks, whatever, customer service numbers, especially for your communications, phone, and internet. Up here, I'm on the water district. I have the water supervisor's number, actually now Rainbow's. But if you have a well, you might want to know who you're going to talk with wells, about wells. You might want to know who your local chainsaw person or tree person is as well. Next question. How do you communicate with them now? Text, face-to-face if they're your neighbors, email. You might still have a sweetie who leaves you notes on the kitchen counter. If you are talking with somebody with phone, which is not a great idea, do they pick up messages? All of these things are things you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about your plan. How do you reach these people? How are you likely to be able to reach these people? One thing that I always want to remember to point out is during fire season, there are usually information boards at Lieberg Store, Blue River Post Office, everyone's, Dakota's, other places that are great places to not only get information, but often to leave a little note for somebody if you can't reach them some other way. Now we're getting a little bit harder. What's the infrastructure you need to talk or to communicate? So if you have a cell phone, you're going to need a cell phone. You're going to need a charger. You're going to need the cell towers to be up and the cell towers to have power. If there are underground cables involved or wires on poles, you are going to need those to remain intact. If you have point-to-point wireless equipment, usually you have to worry about if they can still talk with each other. A couple times we've had our Elevate equipment move and it's like, oh, our internet's not going very well. Oh, Jeff, we put it in the wrong place. Could you come out and re-aim it again? So just that sort of thing, thinking about the infrastructure you have, what you need. Now here's the real kicker. How much of that can you control? And now you might have an idea why I have maybe a love-hate relationship with radio. Because, yeah, I can have my cell phone. But if the cell phone towers are down and they can't get to them, or they can't get to a tower that serves 500 people versus a tower that serves 50,000 or 100,000 people, I'm not going to be able to use my cell phone. The cables, they're great when they work, but when they break, it was probably 4 or 5 months before we got wired internet all places back after the fire. So even, the satellites, they can get turned on, they can get turned off. So this is one thing to be aware of. Just think about not only who owns the equipment, but how resilient is it? Do they have plans to keep the equipment going for months? Because if not, think about other ways to get there. Oh, I didn't quite know how to put this in. Fortunately, this didn't happen to me during the fire, but if you are evacuated, you do want to figure out a way to keep your internet and phone bills current, because I can think of few things worse than trying to communicate when you get communication cut off because you couldn't pay your bill and couldn't physically pay your bill. So I've just talked about preparation, who, how, and equipment. Let's see. Oh, I did not remember to talk about disaster versus emergency enough. Emergency is life is at stake or property is at stake. Life comes first. That's not when you use your radio, unless you're like somebody who uses radio to respond. A disaster, the way I use it is basically I'm snug. I want to know if my neighbor is okay. How do I reach them? Disasters, if we plan them right and take care of each other, we can know that Sarah, for some reason, has a medical device that her life depends on. She thought she was going to be able to deal with loss of power for 5 days, and it's been 7. And so, hey, in about 4 or 5 days, she might need help to stay alive. Easier to deal with something 4 or 5 days out than she's going to die in 20 minutes. I think I did say we sort of have different baselines. We all have different plans. The other thing to remember, especially, I discovered this is communicating with people when you're in a poor communication place, like after the fire, to people who don't have that disaster. You're constantly having to remind them that you don't have good communications and you can't just pick up a cell phone. But the flip side is true as well. There's time when you think, why are they answering the phone? It's like, oh yeah, they just had a disaster. Moving along, we're just going to insert our favorite disaster here. Hadn't thought about needing more than one hand. So power is out, internet is down. What next? Most likely, I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to text my neighbor. I'm going to text my neighbor because I want to know if the power's out for me, just me, if it's a problem with me and my neighbor, so small neighborhood. Hopefully I'd be able to find out if it's power down through Eugene, but it's a whole different can of worms if power is out in Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, and internet is down from Seattle to Santa Clara. I don't have a great plan for how to get here that internet's down and power's out all throughout the region. Just assume the worst if you can't get a different answer. This might seem like a little bit more information than anybody wants. I have like 4 or 5 slides that are like 6-hour slides that you're going to get in 5 minutes or less. Things to keep in mind, there's wired communications and wireless communications. Wireless communications, you need a line of sight. They're usually by a tower or satellites. They're probably, if you can get that information at infrastructure there, a little bit easier to set up than the wires. Wires are great because they can go around corners, they can go in and out of river valleys. That's one thing. The other thing to remember, and I was going to say now there's a few of us who are going to feel really old, is we used to have cell phones that looked like this, right? And then we used to have computers, I don't have one that old, that were totally different. And it's only recently that we've got them both in the same device. Sometimes the cell network works, sometimes the internet works, and you might realize, oh, the cell's down, but I've got internet, or internet's down, but I've got cell. So just realize that they're 2 different networks, 2 different protocols. You have to sort of occasionally separate those in your mind, even though these days it seems like they're exactly the same.
Sure.
Yeah.
Internet, you mean satellite, cable?
Right, yeah, yeah.
Ridge to ridge.
Right.
Kind of 3 different methods. It might not all go down the same time.
Hopefully it won't all go down at the same time. one thing, everything common, communications takes power. So if there's no power, communications is going to be really hard unless we're doing smoke signals and flags. In general, especially if you're doing wireless, the more power you use, the farther you can get. The other thing to be aware of, especially if you're listening on a radio, listening takes a lot less power than sending. So you can have a radio that lasts for 6 hours, you listen all the time and you think, oh, that's great, I've got 6 hours, and then you try to transmit for 15 minutes, you're going to run out of battery, depending on the radio. This slide reminds me to say that, yeah, we're in a river valley, and telecommunications is not only hard all the time, it's very hard in river valleys because we have corners. The other thing to be aware of about this slide is the communications equipment for the cellular system. There's a tower down here that I always forget to talk about. There's a whole lot of communications equipment on Mount Hagen, which is right here. Mount Hagen, if they lose power, they have generators. Those generators, from what I can tell, will last 3 or 4 days without road access for refueling. So that's one sort of thing to know. That's a lot of equipment there, radio equipment, emergency communications, as well as cell towers for all 3 of the providers. We'll get to that. Next up, we have Belknap and Carmen Smith. Those 2 sites, the cellular infrastructure there is towers. I actually realized I don't know who owns the tower. AT&T and T-Mobile have equipment there. AT&T's power backup is generator, and I believe it's no longer direct from the dams. Haven't been able to confirm that. T-Mobile has battery backup on those towers, and we expect that to be good for about 8 hours. That last star up there is Hoodoo. There are links, depending on the company, from Eugene to Mount Hagen to Belknap to Carmen Smith to Hoodoo. Nobody has every single link.
And Sarah, are you just talking about the cellular?
I am just talking about the cellular infrastructure. Yeah. Internet is getting a little bit of a short shrift today, for a lot of reasons. Time being one of them. So you might hear today, know your neighbors. I'm going to flip that and say your neighbors know. Your neighbors know what works for them communications-wise. They know which providers they can get on their property. They know how long their internet and their phone lasts during an outage. This is really good information as you're figuring out what you're going to do. One thing I have discovered is this stuff seems to change all the time. So what worked yesterday may not work today. What worked 6 months ago, especially what worked pre-fire, doesn't always work post-fire. And for those of you who don't know pre-fire, I'm always referencing 2020 pre-fire, forgetting that they're not forgetting, but the other fires up here since then have not been quite as traumatic, at least for me. This is another sort of interesting thing that people sometimes forget, so I throw it in here. There are 3 physical cell phone networks. Verizon has one, T-Mobile has one, AT&T has one. Anything else like Red Pocket, Straight Talk, Mint, Spectrum Wireless, or Google Fi uses that physical infrastructure. So if you're using Spectrum Wireless, you're on the Verizon network. If you're using Mint Mobile, you're on the T-Mobile network. Red Pocket, you get to choose between at least Verizon and T-Mobile. I think you could also choose AT&T. Google Fi is really interesting. It's one of the new kids on the block, and it uses whatever signal is strongest. Dave just got that. He's been pretty happy with it. For my little emergency phone, this one, in my back pocket, secondary phone that lives in the car as here we go. This one doesn't have a whole lot of text. It doesn't have a whole lot of voice. It doesn't have a whole lot of data because I don't need it. But it's $11 a month, and it's kind of nice when you leave your real phone someplace and you need to reach somebody. If this is always in the car, that was just one of my decisions. My main phone, this kid, which has unlimited text, unlimited voice, and 5 gigabytes of data, I pay $25, $26 a month for. You can get lots more services for more money, but you don't need to spend a lot of money to get a phone service. Internet seems to just last and hang out about $100 a month. Spectrum and CenturyLink are the wired providers. Elevate is a local wireless internet company that came in after the fire. They have equipment on Death Ball and Castle Rock. They have a strong commitment not only to the valley but also to resilience. And they've been actually also very supportive of radio. Starlink is a low Earth orbit satellite system. I think we've all heard of that. You can see, if you want to get Starlink, you can sort of hold your phone up and they'll say, oh, you've got obstructions, you may not be able to game, or, oh, you can do anything you want. Anybody have Starlink now? Okay. One of the cool things about Starlink is if you decide you don't want them, this was before they started their sales, you could have their equipment and turn it off. And this is really nice because it used to be you'd buy their equipment, you'd get a month free, and then you'd set it up to pay it, and then you could pay it. But during that free month, you could buy their equipment, turn it off, and then not turn it on unless you needed it. I don't have Starlink because fortunately I have a neighbor who has Starlink. Viasat is a different kind of satellite that basically is in one place in the sky. And I know some people like that and have it. I'm going to talk about Kuiper and Hughes. I don't know of anyone who has Hughes, which is another satellite system similar to Viasat. Kuiper is going to be Amazon's answer to Starlink. It's going to be a low Earth orbit, a set of low Earth orbit satellites that do communication. They've got a few in the sky right now. They've got launch windows for more. It's supposed to come online at the end of the year. It is unclear yet what cost will be and what service locations will be, but keep an eye out on that because if you have a neighbor and they have Starlink, you might want to consider Kuiper when it's there because 2 systems are better than 1. Power is another thing that could have hours long. You do need a plan to keep your communication devices charged. Solar is pretty nice. You can see our solar panels at the radio table. We've got solar panels, small, charging a basically power station that gives you a lot of options. Charging a little phone battery there. That takes about 2 hours of sun in the day to keep my medical device charged and charge everything we want. It is worth knowing as well. The other side has another battery. That little red thing is an adapter because when I changed phones, I realized I could either buy adapters or I could buy all of my cables again. I have a lot of cables and a lot of different go bags and charging places and things like that. The other thing I discovered in the jury room was this thing that's got a USB-A on one end and got Lightning, USB-C, and micro USB-A on the other end. Even if you don't use it, it might be a good way to make friends. Other important piece, know what your battery can do. That black battery in the picture can basically charge my computer or my laptop, my Chromebook, 2 times, and my phone as many times as I want. Well, probably not, but 10 or 20. This little thing, which long-term recovery group gave me, charges my phone once, but that's fine because I just know my phone is old. It's going to need to be charged every day, and I'm going to need to then run it off this, and then I charge both of them. solar is, I would suggest if everybody can get solar, even like $100 will get you enough solar to keep your communication devices charged. You don't know if you're going to have access to fuel. The other thing to be aware of is if you use one of those gas generators, some electronics are really picky about the quality of your power. And so if I had to use one of those to charge a device, I would use it to charge my power station, and then I would use my power station to charge my phone.
You're forgetting one thing, you can charge a lot off your car battery.
That was in the hidden sources of power slide that I took out, but I do have some other hidden sources of power at the radio table. But yes, I agree. Some text best practices for phone. If you use texts rather than voice, there's a couple things that happen. One is you don't use as much power, so you're not only conserving your phone's power, but you're conserving power for all of the cell phone structure. Those cell towers need to send things out. Voice takes more power and more bandwidth than texting. Texting also goes through much more reliably than voice. I will also warn you, however, that up here, I can send my partner a message and my phone says, yeah, I sent it. And then I can talk to my partner and discover, after looking at his phone, that he didn't receive it, and he can look at my phone and see, oh yeah, there's a reason why she thought she sent it. Couple things that I'm not good about doing, but you want to be able to do, is accessing your voicemail remotely, changing your outgoing message, all of those things to let people know you're fine, you might be not be responding as fast as they want. Another quick question to make sure, who got the emergency alert from Lane County 10 days ago? Yay. If not, you might want to consider figuring out why and getting that alert. Just because you're going to get good information there. Another technique, actually I can maybe save some time. Does everybody know about hotspots and how to turn a phone into a hotspot? It looks like everybody knows. This is really something quite useful if you're with somebody, maybe in Eastern Oregon, and they don't want to lose their Wordle streak. You can say, oh yeah, hey, this one doesn't have anything, but my Verizon phone, yeah, it's got power, and I never use it, so it's got data, so sure, I'll turn it into a hotspot, and you can keep your Wordle streak going. Apps that you might want in a disaster, you want to think about putting them on your phone before the disaster. Even though we may not have internet, other people think we're going to have internet, and other people are going to think that we're going to be able to use that. There's also some good information in some of those apps. So just think about what you might need. I have actually at the radio table also a space. If there's like your favorite app that you thought I should have put on this slide, you can put it on my piece of paper. I will say with NOAA weather alerts, I always leave them off because in the 10 years I've lived here, we've gotten 3 weather alerts, all for Triangle Lake. Other people, the NOAA weather radio works for them perfectly, and they get alerts that are relevant and frequent. Oh, the other thing, this cell phone or internet, you want to have both a web address and a telephone number for contacting things written down. We are actually really fortunate to have a lot of Wi-Fi hotspots now for us, established after the fire. Mackenzie Fire and Rescue Training Center, most of you are upriver, so this won't affect you, but they have a lot of resources down there. Blue River has Starlink at the clinic. The school has Elevate only when the students aren't there. Mackenzie Station Pub, I believe, has Starlink and a generator. UMCC has Elevate and a generator now, right, Margaret? Yeah, cool, thank you. Thank you, UMCC, and thank you to whoever funded that. Dakota's has Starlink, and Belknap has Elevate. There are other places to hop on the computer, like if the library is open, they have Wi-Fi, it's Spectrum, and computers, but they are not willing, they're not able to have things available 24/7 like these other places. This slide and the other information-rich slides are available at the radio table. Okay. You're gonna use, you're gonna use voice or text?
Text.
Text, thank you. Yes, we need to not only conserve power for us, but we need to conserve power because those towers, if they're running off batteries, are going to need power. Just a sort of note, Elevate has made the decision that it actually is not good for them, but good for us, that if they lose at a catastrophic event on Death Ball, their internet will go down before they take the radio repeaters down. So if your internet goes out and you think, oh, I'll just hop on the radio, be aware that the internet may have gone down because power went down and we need to be conserving that resource. I've sort of mentioned practice and updating, but those both need to happen. You need to practice, update plans and records. Okay, seems like this decided not to advance for me. If somebody feels like fighting that, great. If not, I don't know, maybe this is a communication plan to always have backups.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was backwards. Let's see if we can go forwards. Yes, radio. Yeah, thank you very much. Radio is actually kind of magical. It can be really straightforward or it can be really complex. And what I want you to remember from this part of the talk is not so much what the radio resources are, but that radio resources exist, and there are people who are more than willing to help you get there when you are ready, or if you are ready. And if you're never ready, that's fine. They can be really, really simple family radio service. That's the walkie-talkie. You don't need a license for that. GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service. You do need a license, which is good for 10 years. It costs $35, but there's no test. Amateur radio, also called ham radio, you need a license, and there's a series of tests. In general, the more money you pay and the more tests you pass, the more power you are allowed to use and the more places you are allowed to be. Heightened power, if you're trying to do radio work, the higher you get, the less power you need. Or if you're low and you want to use something, you can use a lot of power. An important, really sadly important note to realize is the radio database is public, which is great. Great on some levels and a little bit scary on the other. So anyone can look up either of my call signs. One's WRPP 922, the other's KJ7LCX, and they can find that I live in Blue River. Furthermore, when I was trail running with a radio, because I was by myself, my radio beaconed my location every 90 seconds. And people who knew could watch and see not only how fast I was running, but they could see if I was in trouble or not. Which is really kind of cool, except for the friend who thought I was in trouble didn't know where I lived, and I'd forgotten to turn off my radio. Fortunately, he called my husband and me to say, hey, is Sarah okay? Before he came out from Eugene. Which is really cool, right? Somebody's looking out for me. But also, if you don't want to be found, you need to think about this and perhaps just stick with family radio service. Yeah, thank you. GMRS idea. This is where Mackenzie Community Communications, MCC, has spent a lot of their time and energy thinking about what we need and establishing some resources for us. The idea is that in the event of a disaster, we will be communicating in our little neighborhood groups to figure out who needs what, how we can help them, so we don't have to do a bunch of things. And so all of our first responders can stay busy doing what they need to do and not getting out of trouble that we didn't need to get in. So basically you have a little neighborhood group, you talk with each other. You can also then have repeaters. The repeaters go from, our lower repeater goes from, sorry, MSCC's lower repeater goes Thurston, Springfield, all the way up to a little bit past Ben and J doors with a handheld. I'll talk more about that later. Just realize it's much safer to check on your neighbors in an ice storm or when it's windy or cold out. If you can just call them on the radio and say, hey, are you doing okay? Just checking in. Great, I don't need to do anything. I can stay right here looking at my fire. The other thing is it can take a lot less time to check on a bunch of neighbors. So if you're checking in, this is a wonderful thing to do. Now you might say, great, sign me up, put me in a group. There are things we can do and there are things we can't do. MCC will help you get radios. They have loaner radios. Dave and I and many other folks are more than willing to come out, have one of us on both ends of the radio, teach you how to use the radio, program the radio. The thing we can't do is organize your neighborhood group. You're going to have to go out, do the door knocking, figure out who's in your group, get them to be in a place at a time. Because to be perfectly honest, Dave and I have been trying to organize our neighborhood into a group for 3 or 4 years. And we're getting there. But it's not one of those things that's automatic. So we're more than willing to help you where we can. But if you want to have a little GMRS group, the neighborhoods are going to have to drive that. That's got to come from the ground up, not the top down.
I'm not doing on time, probably. And I've got till 12:30.
Cool. All right, this is another slide that's available at the radio table. Just so you know, MCC has 2 GMRS repeaters that cover basically 242 almost to Finrock. We don't have a lot of operators that we know about in VITA, and so I can't really speak to the VITA sites. The Russell repeater reaches from Ben and K down to Cedar Flat and Thurston. Both of these repeaters are open repeaters and available for use. It doesn't have to be practice. It doesn't have to be a disaster. You can just say, oh, Tracy's always listening to the radio, and I have a quick question for her. You can do that with the radio if you've got a GMRS license. The reason I say this is some people think, oh, it's like, I can't use this in case of disaster, unless it's a disaster. It's like, no, you can use it anytime to chat. The tone you want is 100.0. Some people think that's a private tone. It's not. I mean, it's a privacy tone, but it's public knowledge. We do use both repeaters. We meaning the radio people. Thursday nights, one check-in is at 6 for the Upriver folks. Practice net is 6:30. The other thing that we're trying to convince people, including myself, to do is if anything weird happens, just go ahead and turn on your GMS radio. See what's going on. I forgot to do that with the emergency alert, partly because I was elsewhere, but it's like if there's something that's weird, go on the radio, listen first to make sure that the airwaves are clear, and then just go ahead and use it. One thing I will say, we haven't had this problem on our repeaters because they're pretty silent, but if you're talking with somebody on the radio, pause every now and then on a repeater, because there might be somebody who actually needs to have traffic getting through. I've got time to tell this story, but once I was listening to the radio, repeater in Junction City, and there were 2 people talking about this thing that was going on up here and saying, you know, we have some hams up in Blue River. I wonder how they're doing. And they never paused long enough for me to hop in and say, hi, this is Sarah from Blue River, KJ7LCX. What do you want to know? And I just thought that was really humorous that they were curious about something and didn't remember to leave those pauses. If you are in the Nimrod area or you can reach both repeaters, we would love to hear you. Margaret? That would be long enough.
I just want to say there's a ham, trying to have ham pubs, different places. So if you don't have one yourself, you'll have hams can go farther out. So just inside the door on the right, you see a small ham. center.
You have ham or you have GMRS? Wow.
Coming from,
Wow. I thought it was GMRS that you had here, but
okay, maybe
I think it's GMRS. And the cool thing about the GMRS radio here is that we don't need, from our house in behind the school, we don't need to use the repeater on Death Ball to get here, which is pretty darn cool. I could go into a lot of radio stuff, and I'm not going to. But this is another slide. I just want you to be aware of there's a whole lot of stuff you can do with ham radio, much of which I don't do yet very well, if at all. There's a repeater on Death Ball. For those of you who don't know, Death Ball is kind of across from Living Waters. If you don't know where Living Waters is, it's upriver from Blue River, maybe 2 or 3 miles, I think. Thurston, I'm hoping everybody knows where Thurston is. Those 2 repeaters are linked. You can link ham repeaters, you can't link GMRS repeaters. But through the Death Ball repeater, I can go to the radio on Death Ball repeater. Death Ball can go underground, well, go through the internet to Salem, or Junction City, or I believe the Midwest. Basically, there's a bunch of repeaters, radio repeaters that are linked through the internet, which lets you get out. Peak Radio Association also has a set of linked repeaters over Oregon. There are lots more repeaters. It's pretty amazing. I just highlighted a few. Other things ham radio can do is you can send forms, like FEMA forms. You can send pictures. They say, we want to see the bridge at Blue River collapsed. I can, when I remember how, which is written down, get to the cell phone network through the radio, or get to my radio through the cell phone network. The other thing to be aware of is for Oregon, there's a group of hams who say, you know what, if the internet's down, maybe we want a backup internet. And they are working on building out a sort of backup internet that doesn't use any of the current infrastructure, all with radio. If you're interested in that, and a ham, Groups.io, which is a sort of website that has a lot of groups on it. There's MRARG, which is Mackenzie River area, Mackenzie River Amateur Radio Group. Did I remember to say? Yeah.
If you were up on 242, what station would you use on your phone?
GMRS on 242, I would be trying to get to the Death Ball repeater.
That's all?
Yep. Liz is usually able, she's sometimes able to get us. It depends on propagation. We did end up putting an antenna on her house, I'm pretty sure.
And she's
She's up there, and the other thing is, I don't know if she has a mobile GMRS or a base GMRS, which was going to give you different levels of power. River valleys are hard. They've got turns. I didn't remember to say, see, look at my Radio Go kit. It's amazing what you can do with not very much. That's at the radio table. I did talk about transmitting versus receiving. Where have we been? Okay. Hope you know who, what, how. That's on here. Practicing your plan, ending with radio information. I really would like you, and of course me, to go home. Just accept that I'm going to have a different plan for me, a different plan for my partner, but he gets to do his own. It's not going to work. The same plan's not going to work for everyone. Complete the checklist, make those decisions, get the equipment, write it down, and practice. The other day I was at an MCOM class, and I can't tell you how many times I've used my ham radio. I had to think really hard about what button to push. in order to transmit. And I thought, oh, okay, practice, practice, practice. A lot of people have been instrumental in making sure that we think about communications. Upper Mackenzie Community Center, UNCC, not only is putting on this prep fair, but they have been instrumental in bringing us together after disasters to think about what went right, what went wrong, and how to do better. I want to be sure to acknowledge them. MCC has been just amazing with having radios to lend to people who want to be active. They're nice radios. They've also put up the repeaters. They've also put up and sponsored some of the Wi-Fi hotspots. Jeff Turner, Oregon Internet Response, and Elevate. Many of you may not be aware that Jeff Turner came in right after the fire, got those Wi-Fi hotspots up, and then has managed to stay in the valley, giving us internet. He runs a computer company. It didn't start out as a wireless ISP. He now owns property where he can see death ball, so he can keep an eye on his repeater. The other thing to be aware of is Mackenzie Fire and Rescue, the folks in Leeburg, had a really nice vision of how the GMRS people could help them stay in their station and help them do things that needed to be done and not do things like, okay, you were checking on your neighbors, you slipped and fell. Can we just get you to use radio for that? So they've been really good at seeing how we can help them do their job and take care of ourselves. Which, Joel, I would just have this vision of having a disaster and having you all standing by and going, there's nothing for us to do. I don't think that'll ever happen, but that's my goal. Hope that's okay. So anyway, MCC has also donated a radio, one of their Motion 805Gs, which is like an $80 radio, for me to give away. Rules are you have to either have a GMRS license or get one by the end of June. I work with you if that's difficult. You must reside in a zip code that can reach an MCC repeater. Pick up your ticket at the radio table.
And if I can just say, Sarah, I think
Yeah.
maybe I'm one of the last people who went through this process, and I mean, it was so easy.
Okay.
I was really intimidated by it, but
Okay.
it was so easy, and you and Dave made it
That's-
much easier.
Can I bring you the mic? Basically, it was just this seems like it's hard. It's for me very foreign. As I said, it's a love-hate relationship. More often hate than love. But it's doable, and it might be what we have. This is contact information for me. Those of you who have different contact information realize this is my public contact information. And any questions? I think I ended on time. I could put in more slides.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, can you leave your number up?
It's at the radio table too.
Oh, okay.
Just for those of you who came late, Thursday when Dave and I had dinner at Indigo, we both got the exact